Great. So I just want to, again, extend a very warm welcome to everybody that's been watching these series of interviews that I've been doing. We've been talking a lot about technology and the future of work as opposed to, how we will actually get our jobs done, etc. But today I've got Sally Ann Kasner with us, and I'll introduce you to her in a second. But she's a director at a company called Circular Vision. So, and then what we're going to be talking about is something called the circular economy. Now, I want to tell you, we'll get into this discussion, but this is such an important discussion to have. So, welcome, Sally Ann, and maybe you can just tell everybody, where you're based and what Circular Vision is all about before we get into our chat.
Great. Thanks very much, Peter, for the opportunity and speaking to everyone today. Essentially, Circular Vision is a company or organization that assists businesses or organizations to transition to a more circular economy approach. Where to start? It's often the problem is that we're not quite sure where to start in our own business to transition to something that is more cyclical as opposed to linear in our current economy. So we focused on designing waste out of the system specifically. And I have a background most in the waste sector. And that's where my passion lies. How do we get design waste out of the system?
Okay, great. So, and just, you're based in Cape Town, is that correct?
Yes, based in Cape Town, but I've worked all over the country, and yes.
Brilliant. Okay, so maybe just for the sake of those who have probably may have never heard of the concept of the circular economy, maybe we can talk a little bit about the linear economy, because that's what we're in at the moment mostly. I know there's some big changes happening, but how would you describe the linear economy currently?
The linear economy is essentially what we're so used to. We don't even second guess it anymore. Essentially what happens is we mine minerals or resources out of the ground, we process that, we manufacture that. As consumers, we use it and we dispose of it. We don't even take a sec. We don't even, think about it or take a second to think about it any further than that. We literally, so if you go to a shop, you literally will buy your product, and as soon as you're done with the packaging, it goes into the bin or the recycling bin, and you are finished with it. Thereafter, it literally will be disposed of at a landfill site or in the environment, or hopefully it does get recycled. But essentially, it's literally a take, make, use, and dispose type of system. And if you think about it as an example, a cell phone is a great example, because we've really got into the mindset that every 2 years, we literally have to upgrade our phone. So we will use a cell phone for 2 years. Then the cell phone companies, after your contract's up, will say, you need to upgrade now. And you don't even think about it, but you don't trade your phone, and you just get a new phone. What happens to the old phone? It lies in a drawer for how many years? Or it gets passed on to somebody. But it generally, it never goes back into the system. And within that cell phone, you've got all sorts of precious metals that now have been extracted from the earth and it's not being used. So hopefully, there are e-waste facilities that are now recovering those types of materials, but a lot of that is actually being exported out of South Africa in order to recover those materials. I'm going slightly ahead here.
Sure. So I must tell you, I managed to attend most of the sessions at Davos online. I wasn't actually in the snow, but there was this huge conversation in virtually unrelated panels around this whole concept of the fact that we have got a serious problem that we have to do something about very quickly. In fact, most of the conversation around climate change, as we know, the recent report that came out from the UN, etc., we've got a 12-year window, if that, to do something different. So obviously, this is a very important conversation, and it is my honest belief that organizations and businesses that get it right to actually go from a linear economy to a circular economy are going to be the businesses that survive. These are going to be the ones that will be the companies of the future. And so I have a couple of questions for you, related to what you said around the smartphone. So what would a smartphone look like in a circular economy?
So a nice example of that is actually a company called Fairphone, where they literally they make these phones that are made to last. They're robust, but they're also fixable or repairable. So essentially, if you want to upgrade to a new function on your phone, a new lens for your camera, you literally can take that little piece of that phone out and replace it with the most updated or that new lens that you wanted to put in. So that basically the phone is literally, you can disassemble it yourself, you can fix it yourself, which makes it last longer. At the moment, our products aren't made to last. They are made to almost break as quickly as possible, so you do replace it. Companies are still making products that literally the more you sell, that determines the success of your business. Whereas businesses need to realize that actually that shouldn't be the focus. It's how do you shift your business to become more of a service provider. So some companies are literally looking at providing a service as opposed to a product. So for example, your cell phone perhaps you'd never actually own it, but you would lease it for as long as you needed it. And then, because essentially what you need a phone for, you need it to be connected, you need to be able to make phone calls, you need to have all of your online services in the palm of your hand, if you like. So how do you do that without not necessarily owning the phone? So the company still owns the phone, for example, and they get the phone back after its use, and you can then upgrade to the next one. They can either disassemble it or repair it or refurbish it for reuse, or recover the precious metals and materials from it to make a new phone. So essentially it's really trying to say, how do we design? It's a different design brief, essentially. We're designing for repairability, for prolonged use, to refurbish it, to recycle it, but recycling is a last option. But we want to keep the materials in the system for as long as possible, essentially. Both the biological,
So we were having a brief little discussion around the example of Philips as well. So
yes,
instead of them selling light bulbs, and those bulbs when they blow or when they finish working, they get discarded, and who knows where they end up. Philips has now got a whole system in place where you can actually literally lease a light or the lights in your office. And what happens is when those things stop functioning, they come and collect them, and it comes back into their system of manufacturing. So it's that kind of thing that you're talking about, right?
Absolutely. So, I mean, they've now looked at, well, what does a light bulb do? It provides light. So they're almost selling light as a service as opposed to the light bulb as a product, which often in the linear case, what would happen is Philips wouldn't be involved at all. They would literally, the light bulb would get sold, you use it for as long as it lasts, and then when it's broken, now what do? It goes into the general waste bin. Whereas they're saying, and some of those light bulbs can actually cause quite a problem if they've got mercury in them, like CFLs do, or fluorescent tubes, they have mercury in. LEDs as well, you need to be able to recover these things in a responsible way. By putting it into a general waste bin, it goes directly to landfill or to the environment, which can actually cause problems in terms of groundwater, soil pollution, etc. So essentially what they've done is they've turned the model around, and they've said, well, what do we want to do? As a lighting company, we want to provide light as a service. So our business model is going to shift, or part of our business model is going to shift to provide that light as a service as opposed to the product of a light bulb. We want that material back. So how do we guarantee getting that material back? And one of the ways is to actually say, well, you don't ever need to own that light bulb. We will provide the service to you and just make sure you have light, which is quite cool.
Absolutely. So are you saying that one thing that businesses could start doing is they could start thinking about the concept of maintaining ownership of whatever the product is that they are manufacturing and then moving on to the consumer, maintain ownership of it so that it could actually come back to them, as opposed to ending up in some rubbish dump, right?
Correct. Absolutely. There definitely is room in this type of model, or this in terms of the economy, for that type of business model to come into play. For example, washing machines or tumble dryers, the same kind of service. What do you want from a washing machine? You want to have clean clothes. So perhaps, but you don't necessarily want to own that machine. Generally, after 5 years, they start giving you issues anyway, don't they? So now you, instead of owning it, you literally can have a lease agreement, for example, and pay for every wash maybe, but not pay for the actual machine up front. So there are various different ways of looking at it. But for me, what's exciting about the circular economy is that there are so many different innovations or opportunities that businesses can think about, either with their own product or service or within their own environment at the office itself. There's just so many opportunities that can be unpacked.
So Sally, and I know a few days ago, or a week or so ago, on your LinkedIn profile, you shared, and then we'll get into talking about what we can do as individuals, as families, right? But you shared a link. I think it was something that was produced by the BBC around a mall in Sweden that was completely into this whole concept of a circular economy. Tell me a little bit about that.
So this for me is an untapped resource. I mean, what we have in South Africa, we have, well, let me not generalize. In Cape Town, we have what's called drop-off centers. So you can go and drop off unwanted waste or materials at various drop-off centers, including big appliances that don't work anymore, or couches or anything like that, right? And what they've done in Cape Town is they instead of that going directly to landfill, the operators of these drop-off sites have kept them aside, and you can actually go there and do some sort of informal bargaining and purchasing of those materials if you wanted to. What happened in Sweden is that they've actually formalized it. They literally say, come to us, let us have your old clothes, appliances that can still be fixed or repaired, books, bags, anything, and they literally have put an upmarket kind of spin on it and provided a whole new second life. So it created a mall around it, because at the moment, all of our formal economy, so to speak, is in a mall or a shopping center or some sort of formal business. So in order for people to maybe take it more seriously, maybe it has to be presented in that kind of similar way. So that's what intrigued me about it, is the fact that let's make it appealing. As soon as you make something more appealing, people want it. And want to be part of it and participate. If it's at a drop-off or a dump, then it's just, people aren't really engaged with it, I don't think. Right. So there's a space for that kind of second loop or second life of those materials.
I also saw that H&M has got this huge project on the go where you can bring discarded clothing, jeans and stuff that are worn, and they actually take that material and completely get it to a state where they can make new clothing from it, which is fascinating.
Yeah, exactly.
I wanted to ask you, so often people can get, I know I often get into the space where I become despondent because, there's not much that you can do about the coal plants that are spewing, toxic chemicals into the air in the South African context. There's not much that you can do about that stuff. But if you had to sit down with a family and you had to say to them, here are 3 things that you can do, or 2 things, or 5 things, whatever it is, suggestions that you have to create like a mini circular economy at home, or to spend your money wiser as a consumer, what would your suggestions be?
I think the list is kind of endless because there are just so many opportunities. I know that as a homeowner, you think there aren't, and it's actually quite constrained, and that you're at the mercy of the system. But actually, there are quite a few pushback points that we've almost forgotten about. For example, if you have a garden, not all of us are fortunate enough to have a piece of garden, but if you do, all of your food preparation waste that you have in your kitchen, right? So any food, so food prep and food wastage, you literally can, compost it on site. And there are various methods of, and you don't necessarily have to go bokashi where you have to pay for enzymes or anything like that. You can literally do it very, very simply and add soil conditioner in your garden. That's if you're fortunate enough to have your own garden. If that's not the case, there are other ways that you can do that. You could take it to a drop-off facility, and they can process it there for you for composting. But the other things, from purchasing power, I think purchasing power in a family situation is quite a strong driver. And essentially, when you're going into the shops, you can make decisions in terms of what products you will and won't buy. You'll actually be surprised as to how many products on the shelves are actually imported. So number one, try and find local. Try and support your local South African or proudly South African products, number one. Number two, look at the packaging. Is it in packaging? Does it need to be in packaging? So fruit and vegetables, if you can buy them loose, you don't necessarily have to put them into a barrier bag. You can take your own small bags with if you wanted to, or at least reuse that barrier bag a number of times. Then other things like for the ladies and gents that shave, those terrible disposable razors. They are awful, right? But they do the trick and they are convenient. However, we've forgotten that you can actually use safety razors. Now, you can buy a safety razor and you can buy those, I think it's, I've just forgotten the name of the razor blades themselves. I think it's Minolta. Minolta? I can't remember now. Lion also do the brand of blades. And you literally can replace the blades. There's no plastic. There's no plastic at all. So it's a just complete shift from one product to another product. Or if you've got if you're a little bit more adventurous, you can actually just do the cutthroat razor, which is great. Again, something that lasts forever and never has to be replaced. Soap, you don't have to buy shower gel in a plastic bottle. You can buy soap. What happened? Just soap in a paper container, right? So and then in terms of if you have the means, obviously not all of us are fortunate enough to be able to supplement our water or our energy supplies, but water is probably the easiest entry point in terms of making sure that we use water more wisely. Because don't forget, water, energy is all included within the circular economy. So from a home perspective, water is really quite an easy entry point. Low flow shower heads, low flow taps, aerators. It just decreases your what you are using from that natural resource, essentially, and then use that water wisely. So, for example, your grey water can be reused. We don't need to flush our toilets with beautiful potable water, for example. We can use it on our gardens, things like that. Energy, if you are able to supplement your power with some photovoltaics, or at least a solar water heater, brilliant. So there are lots of little things little to big things that a homeowner can do. Buying power is probably the biggest. Purchasing power, how you choose to use your money when you do go into the shopping centers, even investments are becoming there are certain investment companies that are starting to push for more greener alternatives. But we need to be able to ask those questions. We mustn't feel powerless as a consumer. Imagine if we each did one little thing, just one little thing, the impact that could have as a cumulative total.
Right.
So, yeah.
So what I'm going to do, for everyone, I found a resource from the UN, and it's actually called the Lazy Man's Guide to Saving the Planet. Mm-hmm. But yet the suggestions there, are brilliant, and they, as you correctly said, it's small things that you can do. And, if you start as a family and then start talking about it to your close knit family and extended family, and just start this whole conversation, I think is an important step that we can make. So perhaps in conclusion, I just want to ask you because you track the space obviously carefully as a result of what you do, globally, Do you think we make headway? What is your view?
My gut reaction is basically saying, I hope so. Look, there's a lot of talk, and there have been a lot of commitments made on a public platform in terms of how things need to change. And there are many commitments that have been made by many nations. I'm not sure we're doing it fast enough. I attended the UN Page Summit in January this year, which essentially are ministers from all around the world. And there is a lot of talk happening. I'm not sure that there is enough action at this point. So I think, and I think what's interesting is that the youth is now starting to see this and saying that you guys are not acting fast enough. And when I say you guys, I'm actually referring to governments. Governments have the power to actually change things fairly quickly. And I'm not sure we're doing that. And I think we've seen that with our own government with this energy crisis. Essentially, we are still focusing on coal as one of our major sources of energy and power production in our country. And but they have the power to shift that. And yet they still aren't shifting fast enough. So put it this way, I would love to say that, yes, we will make that 12-year mark, but I'm also realistic to know that I think at the moment, I don't think we're acting fast enough. So as a collective, we definitely all need to be playing a role and not just saying, oh, well, we're never going to make it anyway. I think we all need to play that part and keep pushing so that we do make it.
Okay, so that's actually pretty sobering. I tend to to agree with you there that unless something pretty radical happens here, we have got some serious issues that are very close in our not too distant future. I've been watching young Greta Thunberg, yes, the 16-year-old, and this whole movement that has happened around the world. With children that are using Fridays to what they call climate strike. But I actually want to go back to what we said a little earlier, and that is that, this is a situation where you've got to look yourself in the mirror and be the change that you want to see in the world. Absolutely.
Exactly. I agree.
So Sally Ann, I just want to ask you, where are you active online the most? I know you do quite a bit on LinkedIn, and what I'll do when this interview goes live is for everybody is publish your LinkedIn link so that they can connect up with you. But where else are you active? Where can people sort of tune into the conversations that you are having around this topic?
Thanks. So the other platform is actually the African Circular Economy Network, which is a non-profit organization that a few colleagues and I have established over the last couple of years. And we're very active there. In fact, have established a number of different, we call them chapters around Africa. So we've got country representatives in various African countries, including Nigeria, Ghana, Uganda, and a number of other African countries. And what we're trying to do with that particular NPO is to raise the discussion to link the global north to the global south, because often what seems to happen is that we just the global north speaks and the global south just seems to have to adopt, whereas we need to also formulate our own local solutions to local problems. So the African Circular Economy Network is focused on knowledge sharing and providing a platform in order to connect global north with the global south. And in fact, last week we just had a webinar in terms of how the circular economy can improve livelihoods in African cities, which was very well attended. So African Circular Economy Network is another platform. And the other platform is another non-profit organization called Eco Standard South Africa, which is an eco label that essentially it's based on a cradle-to-cradle approach. So as you know, that there's no grave there. We do not mention the grave. That seems to be the older discourse, essentially wanting to try and keep the materials in circulation for as long as possible. And basically that is it's focused predominantly in the building industry because that has the biggest impact in terms of the contribution to climate change and other materials extraction. So looking at if you're looking to build a greener building, but you need some sort of third-party verification of a particular material, EcoStandard is able to look at that and provide a third-party assessed verification of any kind of environmental claims. So yeah, there are a couple of platforms that I'm active on, but yeah, happy to engage.
Awesome. So I'll also drop the links for those two that you mentioned as well, so that people can go check those out. And I think, we need to perhaps have this conversation more regularly, but thank you very much, Sally-Ann, for taking the time to have a chat to us, and well done for what you guys are doing at Circular Vision. I think that this is a crucially important conversation to have.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks very much.
Great. So I'm just going to turn off the recording for us, and then if you'll stay on for me for a sec, that'll be great.